It's amazing how pathetic Biden, Harris, Sullivan, Blinken, the whole crowd, how pathetic they are. If Israel hadn't defied the demands of this regime, they wouldn't have gone into Rafah. Netanyahu told them, that's where the leadership of Hamas is. They said, we're going to start cutting off arms if you go there. So Netanyahu said, well, we have to go there, we have to defeat them, and we have to kill the heads of Hamas. And there were leaks and attacks on Netanyahu personally trying to smear him. From Biden, from Harris, from Blinken, from Sullivan. Today they got Sinwar. Sullivan, the national security advisor, announced that they did it with the assistance of American intelligence. The Pentagon said Israel did it all by itself. There was no American intelligence. They happened upon him and they killed him. It really is appalling the way this administration conducts itself. They didn't want Israel to go into Rafah. They didn't want Israel to take out Nasrallah. They've been demanding ceasefire. That's the only word they know. It's like they're parrots. They learned one word, ceasefire. Ceasefire, ceasefire, ceasefire. While Israel is decimating Hamas, destroyed its leadership, decimating Hezbollah, destroyed its leadership, is now turning its attention to the mothership. That's right, to Iran, and they're being told by Biden, don't hit their nuclear sites and don't hit their oil platforms, which, of course, is exactly what you'd want to hit. Because if Israel doesn't take out their nuclear sites, nobody else will, and we will have a nuclearized Iran. Israel has, by itself, changed the nature now of the Middle East. And those liberal Democrats out there, and some of my Jewish, I won't call them friends, some of the Jewish, people that I know who are going to vote Democrat. Republicans in Congress, writes David Milstein, my stepson, and he posts it. Republicans in Congress have uncovered more examples that the Biden-Harris administration partial arms embargo continues. Senator Tom Cotton and Mitch McConnell sent a letter detailing 3 weapons and ammunitions being withheld, delayed, including MK-84 2,000-pound bombs, Apache attack helicopters, Caterpillar D9 tractors, which they put lead plating on so they can clear minefields. And the list goes on. Representative McCall sent a letter detailing the 2,000-pound bombs and more than 10 weapon cases Israel purchased via direct commercial sale. They bought it on their own. That are being withheld and delayed for over 4 months. Chairman McCall, chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, pointed out in his letter below, Israel continues to face unprecedented threats from Iran and its terrorist proxies, including Hezbollah in Lebanon, which has fired at Israel almost daily since October 8, causing civilian casualties, displacing over 60,000 civilians. Last week, Israel used a number of 2,000-pound bombs to successfully eliminate arch-terrorist and mass murderer Hezbollah leader Nasrallah and other top Hezbollah leaders. You rightly called this strike a measure of justice. We all wish Israel did not need these larger bombs, but they are operationally necessary, as Israel's enemies, including Hamas and Hezbollah, are intentionally using deeply buried subterranean bunkers and tunnels. I call on you to allow these weapons, which are ready to ship right now, to be sent to Israel immediate. I am also aware of more than 10 other weapon cases purchases via direct commercial sale that have experienced unusual, unexplained delays. Under National Security Presidential Directive 56, the State Department was directed to complete the review and adjudication of license applications within 60 days of receipt. But these cases have been awaiting final approval for an average of over 4 months. See, they're slow walking them. It's clearly not the case that everything else is moving in due course, as unnamed State Department officials have leaked. And the list goes on. In fact, today, one of the reprobates said, other than 2,000-pound bombs, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, everybody on Capitol Hill knows what they're talking about. Everybody. I hear from Breitbart, Joe Biden tries to take credit for Sinwar's killing, but opposed Israel's operations. Harris warned of consequences, writes Joel Pollack. Israel confirmed today that its soldiers had killed Hamas leader Sinwar during a battle the day before in Gaza. That would have been impossible if Joe Biden and Vice President Harris had their way. Nevertheless, Biden tried to take credit in a statement welcoming Sinwar's death on Sunday. Quote, shortly after the October 7 massacres, I directed special operations personnel and our intel professionals to work side by side with their Israeli counterparts to help locate and track Sinwar and other Hamas leaders hiding in Gaza. With our intelligence help, the IDF relentlessly pursued Hamas's leaders, flushing them out of their hiding places and forcing them onto the run. In reality, Biden and Harris stood in the way of the Israeli operations that ultimately led to soldiers finding and killing Sinwar as follows. Sinwar was killed in Rafah. Rafah is a town in southern Gaza near the border with Israel. Prime Minister Netanyahu had wanted to enter Rafah in February, saying the Hamas leaders and Israeli hostages were there. Biden openly opposed Israel's plans. Harris warned of quote-unquote consequences for Israel, including an arms embargo, which they still have in place. Netanyahu eventually ignored them. Israel entered Rafah in May. Few civilians were harmed. 2. Sinwar was killed near the Philadelphia corridor. Sinwar's body was found in a building near the Philadelphia corridor, the road along the border that was the first thing Israeli soldiers seized when entering Gaza. The Biden-Harris administration had pushed Israel to give up control of the Philadelphia corridor and cease fire talks. Israel refused, saying that corridor was essential to stopping weapons from flowing in and Hamas leaders from fleeing. Notably, Sinwar's body was found with cash and passports, suggesting he was trying to escape across the Philadelphia corridor. 3. Sinwar was killed despite threats of an arms embargo. The Biden administration threatened and Harris endorsed an arms embargo against Israel just days before Sinwar was killed. And I just told you, there is in fact an arms embargo. The regime demanded that Israel surge humanitarian aid into Israel and scale back military operations, giving Israel 30 days in which to comply. Number 4, Sinwar was killed despite relentless calls for a unilateral ceasefire. Biden and Harris had explicitly called for a temporary ceasefire to allow for a hostage deal. It was their intention that the temporary deal become permanent. 5, Sinwar was killed despite promises of intel in exchange for a ceasefire. So to entice Israel to agree to a ceasefire with unfavorable conditions, the Biden-Harris administration promised to provide information that it was said would identify the location of Hamas leaders. The idea was to end the war while offering Israel the prospect of targeting strikes on Hamas leaders. Ultimately, Sinwar was killed in an ordinary battle, not a targeted operation. They didn't use American intelligence. The episode recalled Biden's contradictory position on the U.S. operation that killed al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden in 2011. Biden admitted later that he had opposed the operation as being too risky for political reasons. Once it was successful, Biden and then President Obama later campaigned on it for re-election, with Biden famously declaring Osama Biden is dead and General Motors is alive, referring to the automotive industry bailout. Now, White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, speaking to reporters on Air Force One, while accompanying the president en route to Europe, gave credit to the Israeli Defense Forces for the operation. Yes, but he also gave credit to himself and the regime. Talking about intelligence. There was no intelligence. I have posted on social media. An Israeli drone went into the building. Saw it was him. He threw a stick at it. You see that, Mr. Producer? And they blew him to smithereens. If you're willing to look at it, well, his brain exited his head. Did you see that, Mr. Producer? Yes. Yes. I don't think those 72 virgins are going to like what they see. Do you, Mr. Producer? No, I don't think so. He'll burn in hell.